This video was sponsored by Factor. Failure. Failure and mistakes are a part of life. We all make mistakes sometimes. Fail a test, trip down the stairs, tank a show. Companies can make mistakes too. Like Sony. Sony's made a lot of mistakes. They made the PS3 too expensive, they got hacked by North Koreans. Those seem like big mistakes, and they were. But you know what? In my opinion, those are nothing compared to Sony's greatest failure, which was everything that happened with Amazing Spider-Man 2.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man!
Now you might be thinking, there is no way this movie was a bigger mistake than a console launch that almost killed the company. And yeah, that's understandable. The PS3's launch was disastrous. They were losing over $300 on every console sold. But at the same time, the failure of Amazing Spider-Man 2 gave us Morbius. So, fun fact, originally I was going to have both of these movies be in one big video, but halfway through writing, I realized that these are two very different films. The first Amazing Spider-Man was going with a more realistic and darker direction. This was the late 2000s. Everyone wanted to be the Dark Knight. Now, I'm not saying that Amazing Spider-Man copied from Nolan or anything. They were distinctly inspired by the Ultimate Comics. But in my opinion, I think the reason the studio even went with the tone of Ultimate in the first place was because of this greater Hollywood trend. Amazing Spider-Man 1 came out in 2012, which for comic book movies might as well be 65 million BC, because on that year, everyone died to a meteor. The Avengers changed everything, but it really, and I mean really, changed Sony. Because now Sony wanted a cinematic universe of their own, and by golly they were gonna get it, no matter which movie suffered. Which brings me to Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, look, I get that there's some people that like this movie. If you're one of those people, if you think that it's great, that's okay. I still think it's pretty bad.
It's time for me to light my candles!
Yeah, even though I enjoyed the first movie, I have to admit, something went terribly wrong with the sequel.
Peter.
But still, even after saying that, there's a few reasons I think that people do like this movie. And I got a list of them right here. For one, nostalgia. If you saw this as a kid, then of course you're gonna have fond memories over it. I have fond memories for Agent Cody Banks. Doesn't mean I think it was great. Two, there are genuine good moments in this film.
Sorry, I love you, don't hate me.
Not with anything involving the plot is still god-awful, but the characters are nice, they feel like real people, and especially nowadays for mainstream movies, that's hard to come by. And that kind of contributes to number 3. Some people really don't like MCU Spider-Man.
Beats history's greatest monster!
If there's one thing this duology has, it's got hype moments and aura, kinda like another middle child. This movie looks very good. Personally, I think it's the best Spider-Man has ever looked in live action. Yes, Raimi fans, you heard me. This movie has so many dynamic poses, it's like something from a panel. The Tom Holland movies didn't really do that. Was it because this version of Spider-Man was younger and less experienced? Or is it because John Watts is a talentless fraud like the internet says? You decide. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is like a bag of randomly flavored jelly beans. Some flavors are really good. Some of my favorite flavors in a Spider-Man film.
What's your name?
Jorge.
Jorge? I'm Spider-Man.
Then some flavors taste like dog shit. A movie isn't good because of a decent ending, or small moments, or the swinging. It's the full package. A lot of the new praise is coming from places like TikTok and Twitter because people are only seeing the enjoyable jelly beans. They can just ignore half the plot being about Peter's stupid parents or Spider-Man blood. Are you wrong for enjoying this movie? No. You can enjoy any movie for any reason. But I do just want to say this. If you are a fan, please stop trying to spread the gospel that Amazing Spider-Man 2 is some hidden gem. It's really not.
It's just the wrist, it's just all in the wrist, buddy.
It's got some good moments. That's it. Our standards are just in the gutter. Hi, I'm Chef Bobby Boobadelli, and I'll be honest, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't even cook. But I don't need to, thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Factor. Factor delivers delicious cooked meals right to your door. All you have to do is microwave them for 2 minutes and you're ready to go. I went with the Chef Choice meals, so I had such options like short rib penne primavera, oh my, ribs, and this kebab chicken bowl. These are meals made with balanced macros and at least 2 vegetables per meal, built to help you hit your nutrition goals this summer. 97% of people say Factor has helped them live an easier life. Eating clean has never been easier thanks to Factor. So why not try Factor out? It's an easy way to have home-cooked meals for those that don't have the time to cook. Head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code PointlessHubFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code PointlessHubFB50 at Factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Pointless Hub FB50 at Factor75.com. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Now, if you don't mind me, I gotta go find myself. What's my purpose? Who is Bobby Boobadelli? So, because this was originally meant to be one video, there was a major plot point I didn't talk about from the original movie, and that was Peter Parker's parents. Oh boy. Here's the thing. Peter's parents don't really matter. Spider-Man is one of the biggest characters in the world, but does anybody know the name of his mom and dad? Do you think if you went to a comic convention many would even know? Or hell, what their job even was? Because you think it'd be like scientists or something. But guess what, bucko? In the mainline comic, they were CIA agents. This is the funniest and stupidest piece of lore, and nobody gives a shit about it because nobody cares about these two. So, what if we took these incredibly irrelevant characters and gave them a whole corporate conspiracy subplot?
You're fired.
And with good cause.
I swear, this stupid parent arc brought these movies down at least 2 points on a review scale. People accuse the Garfield movies of trying so hard to be different for the sake of being different, and most of the time they're kind of wrong, except for when it comes to the parents.
Maybe they're right.
This is some time-wasting nonsense to make the reboot feel unique. In the first movie, a young Peter plays hide-and-seek. After dilly-dallying around the house for a few minutes, he comes across his dad's office, destroyed and ransacked. Oh no. His parents panic, wipe the slate clean, literally, and drop their kid off at his aunt and uncle's before running into the night. What was that all about? Who knows? Something with spiders. We later learned Peter's dad was a scientist at Oscorp and he worked with Dr. Connors, so it was probably something spider and genetic related. Hint hint. The start of Amazing Spider-Man 2 is when we see the parents' perspective, when they just die immediately. Man, it's a good thing they didn't bring Peter with them because they are really bad at going into hiding. In his very last moments, Peter's dad saves his project to Google Drive using his Sony laptop. So what was this whole kerfuffle all about? Why did Oscorp Flight 93 Spider-Man's parents? Well, you know those radioactive spiders? Peter's dad made those.
The human DNA that I implanted in the spiders.
Originally, he was working for Osborn to create spiders that might heal him. But then Osborn, being Osborn, wanted to sell the research to make bioweapons. Peter's dad said no and moved his drug lab to an abandoned subway car like the sheep in Zootopia. His dad got the last laugh though, because he used his own DNA in the spider experiments, and without him, the experiments just end. Long story short, the build-up for this whole grand conspiracy is that only Peter could be Spider-Man.
Without me, without my bloodline, Oscorp can never replicate or continue my experiments.
Like, if anyone else got bit by the spider, they probably wouldn't have gotten powers, they would have just died. This is dumb, right? I'm sure this point has been repeated a lot, but this just undermines Spider-Man. Having him get his powers because his dad designed the mutant bug just brings in a dumb chosen one element. Spider-Man could only exist because Peter had the right genetic password, or else he would have died of cancer or something. Glad we wasted so much time on that. This is so funny. In a deleted scene, it's revealed that Peter's dad was actually alive.
Peter.
These movies had a lot of deleted scenes, some that would have contributed a lot to the characters, and some that just break the plot even more. This is one of those scenes. At the end of the movie, after Peter is standing at the grave of old Gwendolyn, his dad just shows up. Like Truman's fake dad. He reveals that he was in hiding this whole time, and he tells Peter to get back on his feet, that he has the power to give great responsibility.
With great power comes great responsibility.
How the hell did he survive this? Did he use that parachute? Man, they were gonna say he used a parachute, weren't they? The first movie worked because they just let Peter learn his lesson through a character arc. You did it right the first time. Leave it with that. Don't have his dead dad come back to life hoping nerds will point at the screen because he said the funny line. If you're writing a Spider-Man movie, it's now your great responsibility to never use that line ever again. So first off, Rhino. Is Rhino even a villain in this? He's kinda just comedic relief, if you consider vehicular manslaughter hilarious.
I'm gonna be right back.
It's so funny thinking about this scene for more than 5 seconds. Like, Spidey has all the time in the world to stop this man. He notices the truck barreling towards oncoming traffic, and he just swings away. At least 5 people are horrifically injured or killed because Spider-Man wanted to be silly.
Spider-Man, you can call me Webhead, you can call me amazing, just don't call me late for dinner, you get it?
The villains in Amazing Spider-Man 2 suck so much, man. That can really be said for both of these movies, but the villains here are a downgrade across the board. Even the worst villain in the Raimi movies, you know, Venom, at least had a better motivation to hate Peter Parker than wanting to inject Spider-Man's blood into himself.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man!
I'll get to Harry in a bit, but let's talk about Electro. Electro is symbolic of this entire movie, really, because there are some things I really like that they did with them, and then there's abysmal dog shit. Despite being a founding member of the Sinister Six, Electro's kind of a B-list Spidey villain. A lot of times he's either a one-off threat or treated like a joke.
If it weren't for Spider-Man, I'd be a god now!
Would you shut up?
What's his motivation? He's a crook that shoots electricity. So I like the idea in this movie that Max was just some nobody that was saved by Spidey and became absolutely obsessed with him. Then you know he falls in a vat of eels like you do, turns blue, and thinks that now the world will finally see him. Giving Electro a complex is a good idea. It's such a good idea, of course this movie didn't come up with it. Not gonna say the specific issue, but there's a story from the early 90s where Electro doesn't want to be seen as a nobody anymore, so he tries to be the brightest thing in New York City. So this is an already established part of his character. I would imagine Spidey interacts with hundreds of random civilians every day, so of course he's gonna interact with a few weirdos. Max is one of those weirdos. This is a guy who has never been seen in his life, forgotten by the world. His own mom forgot his birthday in the deleted scenes, but you know who noticed him? Spider-Man.
You're not a nobody, you're somebody.
Spider-Man is his friend, so he gets a little, obsessive. Oh no.
You remember my birthday?
I've seen complaints about how Electro becomes a bad guy way too quickly. Like he goes insane because the cameras focus on Spider-Man for like 10 seconds and people are cheering for him. But I don't know. Work in customer service for a little bit. Deal with the general population. People lose their minds over situations of far less importance. Max has a few screws loose even before the eels incident.
I'm Spider-Man.
You're no Spider-Man!
This whole scene is really Spidey trying to calm down a very unstable man. Could Spidey have talked Max down and gotten him some help? Maybe, but I guess we'll never know because the fucking cops shoot him. Just like that sunny day in Dallas, a sniper had to ruin all the fun. As funny as it'd be to just blame this one sniper for the events in the rest of the movie, let's be honest, Max was gonna snap no matter what. I'd like to see an alternate version of this story where Spidey leaves Max on red and he blows up half of New York because of it. Electro's kind of just a lolcow Dr. Manhattan. He even made his own custom anthem and everything. Oh my god, the song. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the most 2014 movie ever made, and Exhibit A is Electro's theme being, this. A true collaboration between the minds of Hans Zimmer and Pharrell. I love these lyrics, man. They lied to me. They shot at me. They hate on me. They're dead to me. And now they're all my enemy. I bet that goes hard if you're 11. Why Electro's theme is a musical masterpiece. It sure is. Instead of just letting the audience see Electro work through these emotions, you know, with acting, they have the soundtrack just spell it out for us. Congrats, Pharrell, you somehow made the storytelling in Amazing Spider-Man 2 even worse. I wasn't kidding when I called him Dr. Manhattan, by the way. This guy is basically a god. He's not like comic Electro at all. He can reappear and disappear at whim. He can travel through any source of electricity. He can embody himself in entire skyscrapers and form his face in the lights. He's so powerful, they had to nerf him in No Way Home. This is not the same character, and I don't just mean because Jamie Foxx is just playing himself.
The power is different. I like it. Be like a god to them.
Or that he's not blue anymore. Oh yeah, the blue thing. Yeah, Electro is blue, and people don't like that. That's not Electro at all. Electro's supposed to be green and yellow. Well, what if I told you that he was blue for an amazing reason? Well, not an amazing reason, it's the Ultimate Comics. That's what he looked like in the Ultimate Comics. I need to stop bringing up the Ultimate Comics. It's so funny that Sony said this reboot was meant to be more grounded than the Raimi movies, and then Spider-Man immediately fights an Avengers-level threat. Electro is the best of the Amazing Spider-Man villains, but that isn't a very high bar. Maybe I just like slow motion and bright lights. I like the dumb itsy-bitsy spider gag. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Like I said before, this is a very good-looking movie, so there are very gorgeous-looking shots in the climax. A bit of eye candy before we have to see that. Oh my god, Harry sucks, dude.
When you said Spider-Man said no, you meant you said no.
So much of Amazing Spider-Man's failures are just because they botched Harry Osborn. Really, the Osborns in general. They could have taken the story in any direction they wanted, and they decided to have the Green Goblin again, but far, far worse. And the biggest problem with bringing back the Goblin is that now the movie has to waste so much time reintroducing the audience to the Osborns.
There's nothing to distract from your unibrow. There he is. There he is.
Did you know that Peter Parker was actually friends with Harry Osborn this entire time? No? Well, you do now. The introduction of Harry is such an unnatural shoehorn. They don't even have a good explanation for why these guys know each other. Peter's like 18 to 19 in this movie, right? They haven't seen each other in 8 years, so the last time they saw each other, they were 10. For kids, that's like forever. That's half of their lifetime. Yet these guys reconnect like nothing happened.
There he is. There he is.
There he is. That's the 10-year-old kid I knew back in the 5th grade. This relationship feels so fake. If they had just established Harry even once in the first movie, it would have been less jarring. But instead, they just plop Harry into this world like a newly created me.
You ain't gotta explain anything to me, man.
Yeah, of course he was here the entire time. We didn't just will him into existence 5 seconds ago. Can't you tell how much these two are friends? They laugh so much. This is what friends do.
There he is. There he is.
It was teased in the first movie with all that experimentation Connors was doing, but now we finally see the reason for all of Osborn's wacky tests. Norman Osborn is sick and dying. He has a genetic disease that I guess all Osborn men get, like the stupid gene from The Simpsons, and his son Harry finds out that he has it too, literally on his father's deathbed.
I never told you. That it's genetic.
The way this disease works doesn't even make sense, because Norman dies from it in his late 50s, but then Harry begins deteriorating at the age of 19. Like, he finds out from his dad he's got the sickness, and it immediately activates within him. Why don't you do whatever your dad was doing? That seemed to work well for him for a little while. Sorry, we gotta speed up this shit quick. He's gotta get Spider-Man's blood pronto. Yeah, that's a whole thing. Harry learns that Spider-Man has blood that might cure him, and he asks Spider-Man very nicely if he can have it.
I can't give you my blood. Not right now.
Excuse me?
Am I meant to feel sorry for Harry Osborn because he has a fake made-up disease? Am I meant to feel anything? Because I don't. In my opinion, if I was Spider-Man, even if I knew I had radioactive blood, even if I knew there might be consequences, I'd still help the guy out. Is it dangerous? Sure, but he's gonna die pretty soon, I bet. So does it really matter if he dies faster? Hell, in the original comics, Peter had this exact same fear, but he gave his blood anyway because it was the only way to save Aunt May's life. This is somewhat within Peter's personality to worry about all the scenarios, but also, his fears are a little too on the money here. I guess Peter was correct the entire time to immediately shut Harry down, almost like he kind of had clairvoyance from the writers. It wasn't just so we had to move the story along. Peter just knows science. This is all based on science. He knew that if he gave his blood to Harry, he would immediately turn into a goblin man in a matter of seconds. I hate when scripts do this. Peter has to say no in a pretty harsh way so Harry would hate him forever, and the blood had to rapidly mutate Harry because we need the Green Goblin. But why? Why do we need the Green Goblin back? They brought the Green Goblin back because in the comics, that's how Gwen died. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is like a reverse Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man's a pretty good movie, until the finale, where everything just falls apart. Things just end on a very flat note. Harry's death felt very Halo 3, like this is the end, we gotta kill people off for the stakes. Hell, Harry forgives Peter in the dumbest way. His butler just goes right up to him and says, "Oh yeah, Spider-Man didn't kill Norman Osborn."
The blade that pierced his body came from his glider.
And Harry's like, "Oh, okay." The butler kept this critical piece of information to himself for no reason. He tells Harry this so he can go off and fight in a battle where he might die, and then he dies. Did you just want to kill Harry off? Man, I'm going on a tangent. My point is that Spider-Man 3 set up a lot of good things, and then it just unraveled at the end. In my opinion, Amazing Spider-Man 2 kind of did the opposite, where the movie was absolutely ass for most of the runtime, but then at the end, it just locks in. Yeah, I like the ending of Amazing Spider-Man 2. Despite how it sounds on paper, having the city lose power is an interesting problem. I like the way Peter and Gwen defeat Electro too, with science. It shows how these two are very smart in how they save the city, and also how they're very stupid for staying together. That's the only real theme of the movie, in a way. The movie keeps showing us that this is a bad idea the entire time. Peter keeps having those visions, and despite doing everything he can, it doesn't matter. Gwen dies. Now, one of the main reasons they wanted to do a reboot was to keep Peter in high school, and then they just undermined that by having him graduate anyway. That was pretty stupid, but I get why they did it. And it was all for Gwen's speech. That's it. Just so Gwen could be the inspiration Peter had to be Spider-Man again after she died. I like this ending because it just leaves it up to your imagination what comes next, even if that wasn't the intention at all. This was not supposed to be open-ended. This was supposed to hype the audience up for a series of movies that just never came. But because that didn't happen, it made this movie hit a bit harder. That's why I have a fourth reason for why some people like Amazing Spider-Man 2. It ended. The best thing that ever happened to the Andrew Garfield movies was that there wasn't another one. Because if there was, Sony would have made everything worse. Nowadays you hear people say that they wish there would have been an Amazing Spider-Man 3. Man, if only they had stuck with Andrew Garfield and done a third movie. That would have been so great. Yeah, Sony was so incompetent that the next movie wasn't even gonna be Amazing Spider-Man 3. It was gonna be the Sinister Six. They wanted their own cinematic universe. It would have been beautiful for all the wrong reasons. Man, this movie was already littered with so many little Easter eggs and tidbits that were meant to be expanded on later.
What's your name?
Felicia.
Hell, Norman Osborn was gonna come back to life. They cryo-freezed his head like Walt Disney. MJ was filmed, but those scenes were entirely cut. There are videos out there about the plans Sony had, so I'm not gonna get into all of that, but I am gonna say that if they had gone through with any of it, nobody would look back on this movie fondly. And this is what I've thought about. Even if these movies were good, I don't think Marvel fans of the early 2010s would have even cared. Online nerds would constantly whine and complain that Sony just keeps hogging Spider-Man. If you're too young to remember the internet of 2014, this might shock you, but there was a time when one of the biggest complaints people had against these movies was that they were not connected to the MCU. Oh, man, the past is truly a different country. Sony was trying to hold on to Spider-Man as much as possible. That's true. But this was an unwinnable battle. The more they would have clung onto Spider-Man, the more people would have rejected it. So what does this all mean? This is a bad movie, with good parts. And those good parts stand out nowadays because of what the MCU has become. That really just means it has good CGI and characters that aren't constantly quipping. Andrew Garfield's appreciated as Spider-Man today, but that's only because his time ended too soon. And the thing is, no studio could ever make a better Amazing Spider-Man 3 than the one the fans have conjured up in their minds. Especially if that studio is Sony. Which is why I call this movie Sony's greatest failure. Because it is. It's the movie that, whether they wanted to or not, made them give up Spider-Man. What's funny though, is that for the last decade, they've still tried to have that Sinister Six movie. They've been crafting a universe of their own without Spider-Man, movie after movie, that just kind of continued to hurt their reputation. Like Morbius, Madam Web, and who could forget Kraven? And it's all because one movie underperformed in 2014.
That's a question. That's a question.
The G virus didn't start in a laboratory. It started with a little girl locked in a cell, experimented on for years, and a discovery umbrella made inside her body that they were willing to do anything to get their hands on. Tonight, we're going through the complete timeline of the G virus. If you enjoy, a like and a subscribe goes a long way, and every single one means a lot to me. The progenitor virus was isolated on December 4th, 1966, by James Marcus, Oswell Spencer, and Edward Ashford. They found the pathogen inside the sacred flower, discovered in the Kajuju region of West Africa. At a cellular level, the virus aggressively rewrote genetic code and hyper-accelerated mutation. While the later T virus was a crude weaponization of this code meant to cause decay, the raw strain held much evolutionary potential. It was designed to fully rewrite human biology, to forge an immortal race of superior gods. The Ndapaya tribe had lived near the ancient ruins for generations. Their tradition, simple and brutal. Their hunters would eat the flower, and whoever survived the trial would lead the tribe. Most died, but those who didn't came away faster, stronger, and seemingly resistant to the decay that claimed everyone else in time. The tribe stumbled onto something ancient without fully understanding what it was. They didn't need to understand the science. They just needed to survive the process. The 3 researchers arrived in West Africa with the specific intention of finding what the tribe had been using for centuries. They weren't doctors in a humanitarian sense. They were men with a shared vision and a private program they hadn't disclosed to any government. They found the flower and they isolated the virus. By early December, they confirmed that what they held was an organism capable of rewriting the code of any cell it entered. Spencer had been thinking about eugenics long before he ever set foot in Africa. He immediately understood that he held the foundation of a program meant to redesign the human race entirely. He didn't care about medical breakthroughs or treating diseases. He saw a future where he could decide who survived and who evolved. A vision that would eventually poison the next 30 years of human history. Part 2. The T virus and its limitations. James Marcus stabilized the progenitor code by splicing it with leech DNA, creating the T virus that William Birkin subsequently inherited. However, the virus possessed a critical, massive flaw. Its genetic mutations were entirely random, uncontrolled, and unstable. It caused severe brain necrosis, making its biological weapons mindless, decaying, and tactically unreliable. Birkin grew intensely frustrated by this limitation. He wanted to engineer a precise, self-stabilizing pathogen that could force a host to adapt without destroying their higher cognitive faculties. The T virus killed the host's mind, leaving a shambling corpse that followed simple commands. It was a failure as a true evolutionary tool because it destroyed the intelligence it was meant to improve. Birkin knew that to build a superior human, he had to keep the brain functional. He spent his years in the training facility trying to refine the viral strands to prevent the necrosis. He failed to find a stable line that didn't rot the host from the inside. This limitation drove Birkin toward his own research path. He stopped viewing the T virus as the final goal and started seeing it as a stepping stone. He needed a viral agent that could work with the host's nervous system instead of tearing it apart. He began to believe that the key wasn't in the leech DNA Marcus used, but in a completely different kind of mutation process. The frustration colored his interactions with his peers. He looked at the other researchers as if they were blind to the obvious failure of the project. He believed he was the only one in the company who could see past the immediate weaponization goals to the true evolutionary future. He was right, but he was also becoming dangerous in his obsession. Part 3. William Birkin in 1978. In 1977, a 15-year-old William Birkin arrived at Umbrella's training facility as an elite prodigy. Under the direct, eccentric mentorship of James Marcus, Birkin was introduced to the foundational laws of viral recombination. His academic ambition was already vastly larger than his age suggested. He openly mocked his peers, despised corporate limitations, and grew entirely obsessed with surpassing Marcus's work. Resolving to find a viral breakthrough that would grant him absolute dominance over Umbrella's scientific hierarchy, Birkin didn't see himself as a student, but as a future director. He spent his nights reading the private journals of the founders, mapping out the mistakes they had made in their early research. He believed the company was stagnating under Marcus's cautious direction, wasting precious resources on leeches when they should have been focusing on true cellular rewriting. He treated the laboratory like his personal domain, pushing his experiments until the early morning hours. His obsession alienated him from the other researchers, but he didn't care about their opinion. He wanted recognition from the board, not friendship from his colleagues. He began to keep his best data in a secret folder, shielding his progress from Marcus's oversight. He knew that if he wanted to control the future, he had to keep his own secrets. The facility became his entire world. He didn't have hobbies or interests outside of the glass and the slides. Every successful mutation he witnessed was another piece of evidence that his vision was superior to the board's stagnant goals. By the time he turned 17, he was already leading the most promising research track in the entire facility. In 1988, the Arklay laboratory team, led by a young Albert Wesker and William Birkin, injected a high-tier biological asset named Lisa Trevor with the experimental parasite. The parasite was designed to nest in a host's brainstem to grant tactical intelligence. But Lisa's body had spent 30 continuous years absorbing every viral strain Umbrella possessed. Her unique, resilient anatomy did something biologically impossible. Instead of succumbing to the parasite, her immune system aggressively attacked, dismantled, and absorbed the organism, fusing its parasitic properties directly into her mutated cellular matrix. Lisa wasn't a normal subject. She'd been trapped in the mansion for decades, subjected to an endless battery of chemical injections that would have killed a dozen ordinary humans. She was a living graveyard of abandoned projects, her tissue a chaotic archive of failed experiments. The researchers watched her through the reinforced glass, terrified by how she could survive the lethal doses that were meant to liquefy her organs. She was the company's most expensive mistake. Birkin noticed the change in her behavior as the parasite vanished into her system. She didn't become an intelligent soldier, as the developers had intended. Instead, she became an erratic, violent predator that possessed a terrifying physical durability. She could survive gunfire and impact, her cells repairing the damage within minutes of the trauma. She was a biological paradox that shouldn't have been breathing. The team couldn't manage her anymore. Her presence in the facility grew into a liability, forcing the staff to seal off her containment wing entirely. Birkin continued to monitor her from his remote desk, fascinated by how she'd survived the parasitic fusion. He saw the potential for a breakthrough that would change everything, a path to a true evolutionary leap that didn't require the T-virus rotting line. Part 5. Something impossible in Lisa's blood work. While reviewing Lisa's routine blood work following the failed execution, Birkin isolated an entirely new, unmapped biological signature. Deep within her altered cellular structure, a primitive, hyper-adaptive viral strain had spontaneously evolved out of the absolute annihilation of the parasite. In the seconds it took Birkin to analyze the data, his unhinged genius understood exactly what he was looking at. A pathogen that could aggressively adapt to threats in real time, completely independent of the T-virus lineage. This wasn't just a mutation of the old strain. This was a completely new creature living inside her blood. Birkin realized that Lisa's body hadn't just survived the experiments, she'd created something better. The new virus had stabilized the chaotic strands, forcing them to work in a coordinated way that the T-virus could never achieve. It was the answer to every question he'd asked since he arrived at the training facility. He spent the next night in the lab, rerunning the sequencing on his own private console. He had to be sure. The results were the same every time. The virus was active, aggressive, and perfectly synchronized with Lisa's cellular growth. He knew that if he could extract this strain, he could rewrite the future of the company. The danger of the discovery wasn't lost on him. He knew that if he brought this to the board before he finished his analysis, they would take it away, just like they'd taken the leech research from Marcus. He decided to keep it secret for now. He began planning the next phase of his career from his small desk, his ambition growing as he stared at the glowing monitor. Part 6. The G virus concept. Birkin immediately drafted his master research thesis, naming the discovery the G virus. He established a revolutionary theoretical framework based on directed evolution rather than random mutation. While the T virus caused passive, destructive decay, G was designed to actively rewrite a host's genetic structure in response to external trauma, creating an aggressive, self-correcting biological matrix. Birkin firmly believed his notes were describing the birth of a terrifying new kingdom of sentient life. He didn't want to just create a weapon. He wanted to create an entity that could handle its own survival in any environment. The virus wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to force the host to be better, stronger, and more resilient than the previous version. It was an aggressive solution to the fragility of the human body. He called it his masterpiece, the work that would finally secure his legacy. The thesis detailed the mutation process, explaining how the virus would force the host to build new features as the situation demanded. He described an evolutionary loop that would never stop, an endless cycle of rebuilding and upgrading until the subject reached a